Hey everybody, I'm coming into you live tonight. We're going to be doing a little chat with some of my friends over at the Children's Trust, which is an organization in our home state of Massachusetts. Tammy Bernardi and Delbar Mamadzadeh will be joining us tonight to talk about how we can prevent child abuse as regular people within our communities, and what we need to do to raise more awareness for this issue. So I'm waiting for my friends to join. I see my friend coming through, which is all about supporting parents and how hard it is to be a parent and how much support we really need to give to parents. Hello, my friend.
Hi, how are you doing?
How are you, Delbar?
Good, nice to see you again.
Good to see you. You look so fancy.
Thank you.
I haven't seen Tammy come in yet, but if you want to do a quick intro on yourself, that way anyone who's watching this later on from the recording, we can start on that.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me again. My name is Delbar Mamadzadeh, and I'm the Parent Content and Prevention Specialist at the Children's Trust. The mission of the Children's Trust is to stop child abuse in Massachusetts.
And how long have you been with the Children's Trust now?
I've been there since October, so I'm a pretty new employee, but I'm loving it so far, and I really believe in the work that we do.
Yeah. Now, did you have a background in child development or social work? What is your background educationally?
So background is I spent years studying the best practices for child sexual abuse, and then toxic stress in children, and then adverse childhood experiences.
Okay, that's awesome. That's like so many awesome things that, I'm so glad to see more people aware of ACEs and how they, impact the lives of children and adults, because it's just like for so many years, people just saw the issue of child abuse as something that people just need to get over, right? And it's so much more complex than that. And I'm so grateful for all the research that has been done. Hi, Tammy.
Hi, Tammy.
Hey, how are you doing tonight?
Good.
Hi, Delbar. Hey, Adrienne.
Hi. We were just talking about, how, we as a society have done such a better job understanding the impact of ACEs, that it's not just, bad memories or bad, things that we have to move on from in our life, but that it has, a biological effect on the human brain and our bodily, development and just our overall health.
Definitely.
So thinking about, how much progress has been made, even in really in just a short period of time. I mean, in the past 20 years since people have really begun to understand the impact of ACEs.
Right. I think people are really seeing the connection between what they experienced in childhood and what they're currently experiencing in adulthood. There's so many categories of ACEs, and they're changing every year because there's so many forms of, stress in our society. But just making the connection that, your ACE score doesn't define you, but at least, being aware that there's a connection between, childhood experiences and what you're facing now as an adult, just to be aware of that. I think it's really up and coming. And then also partnering with that is positive childhood experiences. I think that's also like a big theme that's coming up in recent years, because people are recognizing that, you could go through adversity, yes, but if you have also positive experiences, those are a great buffer against the ACEs.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tammy, do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and your work with the Children's Trust?
Sure. I'm really excited to be here with you tonight, and Delbar too, because I've been with the Children's Trust for over 20 years now, and my background's in early childhood education, and I've had such amazing experiences with the Children's Trust working to support our parent in-home coaching program, our Healthy Families program, providing training and support to family support professionals in early childhood and child development topics. And for the past 3 years, I've also been working and focusing on our child sexual abuse prevention programming and training and awareness. So it's just really exciting to be able to put into practice what we know about, just like you were saying, those ACEs and those positive childhood experiences, so that we can focus our work like what we do at the Children's Trust, which is all about prevention and using research-based information and programming to support parents and communities to really build and strengthen families and the overall well-being of children in our Commonwealth.
Yeah, I know. When I first started Mama Bear 10 years ago, and I really, I think child abuse is something that we all care about. We all see it and understand it's an issue, even though if we don't necessarily see it on a day-to-day level or the reality of it until, a really scary story hits the news. But I think that people feel somewhat disempowered in terms of how can they prevent this, because it feels so intangible when it's happening behind closed doors. And how do we prevent it from happening in the first place? Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Tammy, about what exactly the Children's Trust does and the protective factors framework?
Sure. So we utilize the protective factors framework in everything we do. So as a funder, we fund and build programs all across the Commonwealth. We've got over 100 partnerships with programs across the state. And we do this by really, when we think about these protective factors, we're looking at ways in which we can support families based on where they are and what works for them. So for some families, that means learning about child development and parenting through those trained professionals who can provide in-home parent coaching through our Healthy Families Home Visiting Program. For some families, it's through really connecting with other parents and community resources in their hometowns by visiting their family centers. For other families, they may be really interested in visiting our One Tough Job website and learning about parenting and resources in their community that way. So we're really looking at meeting the needs of families wherever they are. And also on a larger systemic level, we really think it's important to empower programs, even the ones we don't fund, right? Like we provide training and support to family support professionals for free across the state. We provide like our Keeping Kids Safe child sexual abuse prevention programming that we provide for staff, we provide for parents. We also really believe strongly in our state partnerships with other agencies and organizations. So, for example, we're co-chairs of the Legislative Task Force on the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. So we really think about providing training and support to professionals, but also working with families in a variety of ways. So we're really supporting them wherever they are and in ways that work for them.
Yeah, I think that is just so important because, it's hard, I think, for a lot of people to understand why an adult would abuse a child. Sometimes people have the mentality of they're monsters and there's no way to rehabilitate them. But I think the reality is we have to kind of come at it from a point of empathy and compassion and understanding that it's not something that people wake up intending to do for the most part, but it's a generational cycle of abuse and neglect and just dealing with personal emotional health. And so I think it can be really tough sometimes for anybody to ask for that kind of help. And so being able to offer those resources through communities and, raising awareness that these resources are available is really essential to preventing abuse, because so much of the focus is often on responding to abuse. And at that point, something terrible has already happened to that child that needs healing. But if we can work on supporting families before they even have children, giving them those resources so that they can be the best parent they can be and work through, whatever trauma. I mean, I think we all have, for the most part, some form of trauma or just negative, attitudes or habits that have just been passed down from generation to generation. And it takes real humility and vulnerability to admit, I can be better, I want to be better, and I need some professional help to do that. So I'm just really grateful for the availability of the resources that the Children's Trust provides, because for me, it is absolutely essential that we can do everything that we can to prevent abuse from happening in the first place. So, I just want to thank you guys for everything you do. And Tammy and Delbar, you guys are just so wonderful and just in giving and being able to have these resources provided for free throughout the state is just, it's a model that I think every state should be following.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and it really is about that trust and building partnerships too, because when we're thinking about, the relationship we have with you and the relationship and partnership we have with all of our programs, and then that parallel that they have with families, it really is about trust so that you can create a situation where parents can create relationships and opportunities to share the struggles and to talk with people who understand what it's like to be stressed. And by having those relationships, and again, that surrounding of supports for families, that helps to reduce those levels of stress and allows the permission to talk about things, because we know so much that it's the secrecy, right? It's the quiet that is what keeps this going, whatever the abuse is. So we want to make sure we're really providing safe opportunities for parents to connect with each other and to connect with professionals who can support them.
Mm-hmm.
Delbar, did you want to share some of the resources and information? Yeah.
Yeah, so we were talking a lot about primary prevention, right, to break the cycle of abuse. And part of that is recognizing, what are the root causes of abuse? And a big risk factor is stress, right? And we can all agree that parenting is one tough job. It's difficult. And of course, there's going to be so many sources of stress. But the protective factors that Tammy was talking about acts as a buffer to that stress, so that it never escalates to, a case of child abuse or neglect. And so that's why we do a lot of writing on different parenting topics focused on stress and child abuse prevention on our parenting website, onetoughjob.org. We also have many, many resources for parents. If you plug in your zip code, you'll get a lot of resources in your community, to help your family and you thrive. Especially there's so much going on these days with the pandemic, and there's just so many sources of stress. But that, doesn't mean that it necessarily will lead to abuse and neglect, but we do just want to recognize that that is a huge risk factor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think, stress is just, it can come from so many different sources. And one of the things we promote, especially during Child Abuse Prevention Month, is ways that we as individual citizens can help make our communities stronger. And, when we talk about the different sources of stress, we think about financial stress, stress of having access to childcare, the stress of simply just being alone. And I think that was a really, concerning thing for myself, thinking about this whole pandemic of people being shut in their houses, not being able to socialize with other people. And in a lot of situations, people were, shut in with abusive partners or parents and situations like that, and they weren't able to access the help that they needed. And as we kind of anticipated, we did see, an uptick in reports of abuse once, things started opening up after, things loosened with the pandemic, because people really didn't have access to seeking help. And I even remember seeing some articles talking about that during the pandemic, the number of children who reached out to organizations like RAINN for access to being sexually abused and exploited, that those numbers went up because those children were, not able to get the support that they need. So, when I think about abuse prevention as a citizen, I think about providing, basic needs within the community, supporting your food pantry, supporting organizations that provide support for families who are, coming out of homelessness, supporting children who are in foster care, how do we reunite those families and provide them, the resources they need to be whole again. So, I think sometimes people don't realize how important it is to simply have families that have access to things like diapers and food and just basic needs, that when that stress is taken away from them, they can focus their energy on their child. It's not focused on, oh my gosh, how am I going to feed you tomorrow? That stress has been taken away. Now they can feel more hopeful and resilient in that situation. So I'm a really big proponent for all of us to be supporting our local food pantries. As a mother, I always did like an Amazon subscribe and save for diapers for my kids. But once my kids were out of diapers, I actually kept doing the subscribe and save, and I drop them off at the food pantry every month so that I know someone else can have those diapers, So it's like little things like that we can do. What else would you suggest?
I think that's such a great point. Like, we all play a role in keeping children safe in our communities, and we can all play a role at every little step we take is exactly that, right? Just awareness that other people may be stressed. What can we do individually? For some of us, it may be just that, like helping to provide some diapers and formula and clothes at your local diaper bank or family center. Looking at who provides services to the community in your own local community. Some people may be really great and want to do things like training, right? So you can connect with your local programming and say, you know what, I've got this skill I'd love to provide. I have information I'd love to provide some family support training to parents. Some people, awareness is just huge, just talking about it and advocating for funding at your local level, asking questions at any place where there are kids. Like if you work at a school, if you work, if you're a coach, right? Like asking, hey, what are our safety protocols for kids and families? And how do we communicate that? So really just being a voice for all different kinds of safety and support to embed these protective factors into all of our work and recognize, like I was just thinking about it the other day, it used to be this old PSA that was like, after every rolling ball comes a running child. And like that was a PSA for all of us to take responsibility for kids. And I feel like that's just like what you're saying, like there's something we can all do, just being aware, noticing that stressed out parent in the grocery store, and taking a moment to just say, whew, sometimes parenting is tough, isn't it? It's one tough job.
We just kind of like give them like we feel you. Like, I remember that one time we were at the grocery store and I saw this guy start walking into the grocery store with like a screaming 3-year-old, and then we saw him walking right back out, and we were just like, we know your pain, because you could tell he was so frustrated. And it's like, I know that, and just knowing that someone empathizes with your situation, I myself as a parent know it like reinvigorates you, because it kind of just brings you back down to earth. You can almost chuckle about it a little bit, because this is just the craziness of parenthood. Don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect it to be fun all the time. But when you look back at it, these really painful moments, you're going to be like, wow, I can't believe I did that. I joke now that I feel like they should make badges for parents where you like earn different badges for different things you have survived, because it is like the toughest job in the world. And yet, there's no instruction manual. Every child is different. There's so many different strategies that you need to play. And it really is. So to have, resources to support people is so important.
Right. And, as we all know, the world is opening back up. And I think something that's really important in abuse prevention is holding our youth serving organizations accountable for their practices that they're implementing to prevent sexual abuse within their organizations. And when we say youth serving organizations, we're not just talking about schools, because kids can be anywhere. After school, you go to your karate studio, gymnastics, music studio. Those are all establishments where children are, residing, and that's a place that potentially, abuse could be an issue. And so I think, one thing that, parents can do, or if you are, a staff or, a volunteer at a youth serving organization, is to check out our website, safekidsthrive.org. And Safe Kids Thrive is a resource where we include tools and resources at absolutely no cost to you, on the best practices for youth serving organizations to prevent sexual abuse within the establishment and keep kids safe while they're there at the youth serving organization. And actually, these guidelines are actually based on the best practices that was developed by the Massachusetts Legislative Task Force on the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse. So these are evidence-based guidelines and resources and tools that you can bring back to your child's YSO and say, hey, do you have these in place? What are you doing to keep kids safe? My kids safe. Also on our website, we recently created a 5-question assessment to kind of see, where the YSO is in their current policies and procedures to keep kids safe at the establishment. So I highly recommend, anyone go on the website, safekidsthrive.org, take the assessment and then kind of peruse the information and just, research all the different ways that all YSOs should be implementing, policies and procedures to keep kids safe at the YSO.
And you know what? I think it's really interesting because so many people, when I tell them that there's no law that requires YSOs to take abuse prevention training, they don't believe it. They're like, wait, how can that be? And I'm like, I'm telling you the truth. They mandate that they train to understand signs and symptoms of abuse in children, which is pretty minimal in my opinion. But I'm like, there is no requirement that these people take abuse prevention training. So, when we have this knowledge that there is a gap, we have responsibility to do something about it. So as uncomfortable as it can be for us to bring this up, because, it kind of calls into question their integrity as an organization, but even for myself, this summer, I'm probably going to sign my kids up for a summer camp for the first time. And so I went, they encouraged me to come for a tour, which I loved. And when I did take the tour, I said, I need to ask, what kind of training do you do for your staff and what kind of policies do you have? And I was really impressed with this organization. They went right into the policies that they had and how they minimize abuse, which I was just so thrilled to hear about. But I said, and I mentioned you guys, I said, well, there is this training that your staff could also take. Would you be interested in? She was like, absolutely. Like, we've done a little bit of that, but she's like, I have to be honest, we need to do more. So being able to address this issue, but then say, and guess what? There's this resource that's available to you for free that will help your organization be safer for kids. And also too, it's a sign of, it's an insurance for them, because the more that they do to reduce opportunities for abuse, they're also reducing opportunity for just suspicion or confusion. So if you don't have an adult alone with a child in a room, and that child says a story and people aren't sure what that story is, then you don't have to worry about that happening. You minimize those situations. You're protecting the children and you're reducing any kind of confusion that can, raise concern. So I think being able to provide resources for training is really an amazing thing that we have here in the state of Massachusetts. So I'm trying to keep you as busy as I can, Tammy, because this should be everywhere.
It should, and I think it's such a great, it is awareness that's such a big part of it, and recognition that you can do something, right? There are things we can do, and while some of them are a little bit complicated as far as let's look at our policies and procedures, just like you were saying, the long-term impacts of support for children and families and prevention of abuse, I mean, that just is tenfold in the rewards. So we want to make sure we're letting people know you can do it. We can help you through it. We've got plenty of resources that, as Delbar was saying, they're for free, they're downloadable. You can start your journey there, and then we can go into training where we really can help people think through, what does this look like for you? And what we find in training, and I really do like that we provide it virtually in a person, but because what that does is we find that people are worried, right? They're really concerned, they're nervous, they don't know what to do, they don't know what to say. So we talk it through, and you can actually see people get a little bit more relaxed and realize, okay, I can do that, because just that discomfort can be such a barrier. But when we think about those numbers, like, we all know somebody who's been impacted by child sexual abuse. We just do. And so what we want to do now is take that knowledge, just like you said, once we know something, we have a responsibility to do something and to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Absolutely. Delbar, do you want to tell us about ways people can support the Children's Trust? I know you guys have a gala coming up in September.
Yeah, we actually have a conference coming up in November as well. Yeah, so the gala will be in September, and right now we're working really hard on our View from All Sides conference that will be happening in November. So we'll be sending out information how to register for that as well. And, I think one thing that people can do is just read our resources and give us feedback and interact with our material on our, websites, and, follow us on social media, and, keep this dialogue going. I think, child abuse is, especially child sexual abuse, extremely dark topic. And as a society, we find it really difficult to talk about. But it is absolutely a public health issue. And, we have to begin by shining a light to the darkness and talking about it and verbalizing it, and recognizing that, it does occur, but that it's absolutely preventable.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the other resources, like we were talking just about our One Tough Job and Save Kids Thrive, but there are also resources on there, things like I know we've got some articles on reporting and what to look for signs and symptoms and what to do, and things that parents can do right on One Tough Job that are simple and straightforward. And I know you have resources as well when we're thinking about how do parents talk with kids about safety topics. So there are resources available on those sites and at your site as well, Adrienne, about clear, simple information for parents, and then what to do if you suspect abuse.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think, the more educated we are, granted, we can never be 100% prepared for every situation, but just educating ourselves. And, I encourage everyone that is listening and watching this video to follow One Tough Job, follow the Children's Trust, and share their posts to your stories, because you never know where that message is going to reach and who it's going to impact. And it's like myself, I think about, like, before I started Mama Bear, I don't recall really anyone in my social media feed really sharing anything about child abuse or, parenting support. But as I've, got the courage to be a voice for this issue, as I share these things, I get that feedback from people every once in a while. It might seem like sometimes like no one's paying attention or listening, but every once in a while you get that feedback of someone saying, thanks really so much for sharing that, because it was helpful to me, and I went through this as a child, and now I'm, whatever their story might be, it is impacting someone's life, to be a voice for this cause. And I mean, it's children. We're all the voices of children. They're whole citizens with whole rights, to live, free and, in the pursuit of happiness. And so as adults, it's really our responsibility, our shared responsibility, whether we have children or we don't have children, to be their voice and do what we can. And, April being Child Abuse Prevention Month, this is just an excuse for anybody to jump on board with this cause and take the time to raise awareness for this issue in this month and supporting organizations like yours, because if we're not doing the work for prevention, I mean, the cost to not prevent abuse is astronomical. It just ripples throughout society. So it's like, as challenging as it might seem to prevent all child abuse from happening, I am a realistic optimist. I believe it is possible that if we just created a tsunami wave of, you know, advocacy and compassion and effort, we can make some serious change. So I really want to thank you guys for being part of the solution and hopping on tonight to raise awareness for the great work that you guys are doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Adrienne. It's great to be here.
Yeah. And thanks for everybody for tuning in. I mean, we had some really great responses and comments. And if we didn't address it during the talk, Delbar or Tammy or someone else from the Children's Trust will respond back in the comments. So I just want to thank you guys for coming on tonight. Thanks to everybody that tuned in. Please support the Children's Trust and One Tough Job, and keep doing everything you're doing to raise awareness for the prevention of child abuse.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.